I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture and Minister responsible for official languages.
The Prime Minister shuffled his cabinet this week to fill the vacancies left by Stephen Guilbeault's resignation. Mark Miller takes over as Minister of Identity and Culture, while Joël Lightbound steps in as Mark Carney's Quebec lieutenant. Guilbeault quit on principle over the continued rolling back of climate policies, most recently in that MOU with Alberta that offers carve-outs to help build a new pipeline. But while that MOU was too much for Guilbeault, new polling suggests it's going over far better with most Canadians. A new poll from Abacus Data shows a majority of Canadians support the pipeline and just 18% oppose. In British Columbia, the opposition is higher at nearly 1 in 3, but half of those polled still support the idea. The Prime Minister justifies his pipeline push by citing the disruption U.S. President Donald Trump and his trade policies are causing. And as luck would have it, Mark Carney is going to see the President tomorrow in Washington. So we've got a lot of ground to cover with our Reporter Roundtable. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Mia Rabson is the Deputy Parliamentary Bureau Chief at the Canadian Press. And Joël Denis Bellavance is the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for La Presse. Good to see you all. JD, what do you make of that polling data? The Abacus data and the Angus Reid data, very similar. And the regional breakdowns from Abacus is like everybody in every region of the country. The lowest is in Quebec, but it's a net positive right across Canada.
I'm not surprised because the fact that the President of the United States is waging a war on us changed the dynamics. And everybody is very conscious of that. And that's why you see more, I think that translating to some kind of economic nationalism on the part of Canadians. Let's take care of our own economy. What can we do for that? We can diversify our exportations. And a key to that is to bring oil to new markets, and I think Canadians are more and more buying that we need another pipeline.
So, Mia, problem solved for the Carney government? It's all good? What do you think?
If it were only that simple for any government. Yeah. No, problem is not solved. I mean, the biggest issues I think they're going to have are within their own caucus right now. You know, you have one cabinet minister, former cabinet minister, still in caucus, Stephen Guilbeault, but you have several other Liberals in that caucus that are asking some tough questions of the Prime Minister right now, and it, you know, it's not necessarily the happiest group. Among Canadians, however, I think we started to see this shift before the last election because of affordability issues. Even among young people, the environment has fallen down the list of things that people, top issues. When you are worried about your job, you're worried about whether you can feed your family, things like the environment, you don't have the capacity to care as much. And so I think that's part of what you're seeing, as well as the support for a pipeline. People are looking for economic growth, they're looking for stability, and that seems to be what they think the Prime Minister is promising. But there is a long road ahead of him before a pipeline is if it ever actually happens.
Bob, very high levels of support right across the country. But, you know, Shachi Curl from Angus Reid was saying earlier that you look at voter support in places like the Lower Mainland or British Columbia, which is a big part of the Liberal government coalition right now, they're down 15 points. Some of it's pipeline to the NDP, some of it's crime and affordability to the Conservatives. But, you know, it's a net hit since Election Day. Yeah,
but the Liberals have 11 of the 20 seats in British Columbia. They won them by 9% or less, but their threat was mainly Conservatives. So they're not in downtown Vancouver, right? Like Peter Julian's seat in those. Not in downtown Vancouver. Yeah. But I'm not even sure that they're going to be threatened. Look, we won't know until there's election campaign. Could be in the spring, given what's unfolding on Parliament Hill. But I think if you see these polls showing that Canadians are overall in favor of focusing on the economy, if it's going to be a pipeline or LNG facilities or critical minerals that's going to create jobs for people, then people are going to probably end up supporting them. The difference is that Carney has an economic plan. He's laid it out, and Canadians will end up making the decision on it. But you cannot deny that the man has a plan and he's laid it out for people. And, you know, I don't know what the politics will eventually be, because elections really do matter. But I think this government is moving in the right direction in terms of what we are seeing from the polls. And I'm not convinced that even in the in the Vancouver area that they're necessarily going to be hurt by it.
And David, if I may say, if the economy is not performing well, if we have a recession, this week we have 1,000 people laid off at Algoma. If the clouds continue to accumulate over the Canadian economy, I wouldn't be surprised if support for a new pipeline keeps rising, actually, because people will say this is what we need, kind of projects to, use the steel in Canada, use the workers, the engineers to create growth and to diversify away from the United States, because the net result of the Algoma layoffs this week is a terrorist war that the U.S. is waging on Canada.
I also saw some data today that suggested outside of a pipeline, that MOU with Alberta could create thousands and thousands of clean energy jobs as well. So that MOU is not just about a pipeline, it is also about some other, electricity,
data centers
and things like that. So, we're focused heavily on the pipeline because that's kind of the lightning rod in the room. But that MOU is about a lot more than that. And I mean, to hear a lot of the MPs whether or not a pipeline is possible, it seems maybe to make a bad pun, a bit of a pipe dream. But it's still, it's sort of energizing people towards an actual project that they might be able to support, but actually gives them some idea that the economy is
it's important to point out, too, that Canada's contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions is 1.5%.
Yeah, per capita, we're pretty high, though.
Right.
Like, we were like double the global average.
But if we sell our natural gas to China and India, that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Maybe if it displaces coal. Like I mean, we hear this argument from Goldie Hyder and others, and I'm not throwing.
It's a legitimate argument.
Well, unless they just add it into their energy mix and don't displace the dirtier stuff, right? Because I mean, you got 1.4 billion people.
But these countries also don't want to be burning coal.
Yeah.
Their own people don't want to be.
Yeah, because the
pollution is terrible.
Yeah. But it's interesting. Just more on the Abacus data from Coletto. BC, it's a net of plus 23. Alberta, plus 63. When have you ever seen anything a federal Liberal Prime Minister's done that's plus 63% in Alberta, plus 47 in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, plus 47 in Ontario, only plus 16 in Quebec, plus 38 in Atlantic. So, like, JD, to your point, like, in places where the Liberals have had some challenges, this is a good move for them in terms of, but I don't know if that translates into any kind of an electoral thing, which is what a lot of Liberals are worried about when they look at the volatility of the BQ voters and the NDP voters. But it seems as if the Prime Minister's just like, that's fine, this is the right thing to do, so let's go. Right?
Yeah, and he's decided to spend some political capital to go ahead with that thing. And so I think we'll see whether this political capital will bring rewards in the election campaign. Election campaigns have their own themes, their own dynamics that may be not related to what we are discussing today. Scandals get erupt, some other leader might be gone by then, so we'll change the dynamics, so we never know. So, but it's still, I mean, I agree with Bob. Mr. Carney and his ministers, especially Tim Hodgson, have laid out a plan that they think can bring back economic growth in Canada, move away from the United States, and that plan is being, unfolding, if I may say, in a very careful manner.
But political capital, they're spending it on this, but Mia, that Tim Hodgson was at the AFN today. He has to spend some political capital with First Nations in British Columbia to get this moving. I mean, what did you make of how that has sort of played out? Like, there was a frustration from the BC Chiefs giving him an F for the consultation. Like, popular broadly, but the area where the pipeline's going to go, it seems like, or potentially go, not popular at all.
I mean, they have a lot of work to do when it comes to those conversations. The Prime Minister has said many times that those consultations are going to happen. He said this week that the Bill C-5, the one that sort of major projects legislation to speed the approvals up, was really just about talking about speeding up what the federal government itself does. It wasn't talking just about the consultation process. So, but there's a lack of trust there. And I mean, Minister Hodgson went to the AFN today. He met privately with some chiefs. He was supposed to speak at a panel, and he didn't, because he was told that the government sort of changed its mind and that he shouldn't actually speak there. He himself has a little bit of ground to make up after some comments he might have made on your show. I believe it was last week.
Yeah, the Zoom chat.
That
Zoom comment,
didn't really go over well. So he himself has some ground to make up there. That is not going to be an easy thing for this government. So far, I'd say they haven't entirely handled it well.
Bob, I have a defense mechanism where I black out when someone talks about an election coming federally, but you speculated we could have one in the spring. Am I understanding that right? Like, there's a problem now on Parliament Hill, because I do want to go back to that.
Yes, it is.
They lost Elizabeth May's vote for any future things because they immediately sort of broke the deal, right? The NDP, I mean, they stand to potentially gain from pipeline pushback, the Conservatives, we know, and now they're struggling with the Bloc Québécois on the C9 issue about hate speech. I mean, it is very difficult to see partners.
Yeah,
for them. It's gotten worse.
I
Right?
think there's a real possibility of an election in the spring. They've lost Elizabeth May. They're going to have, the NDP will have a new leader. There's no way that a new leader is going to be able to prop up the Liberal government in any kind of form, and for the reason you outlined as well, there is now an opportunity for the NDP to differentiate themselves from this more centrist Carney government, and they have an opportunity to grow seats. The Conservatives have been filibustering and at committee. They've been holding up budget legislation and other pieces of legislation. They are not cooperative at all. And the Bloc can see them, or potentially can see themselves as picking up seats in Quebec. So at some point, I think the Prime Minister is going to have to make a decision and go to the Canadian people and say, I need a majority government. The Conservatives are blocking legislation, and I have an agenda that the opposition parties do not want to support. And I really do think we're probably going to have an election in.
I would agree.
What do you two smart people think?
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I have a feeling that the willingness to make compromise is gone on Parliament Hill. And after the budget vote and the way that the Carney government handled its negotiation or talks with opposition parties, there was no talks. Yeah. You take it or leave it. That approach cannot be repeated.
But then what they gave Elizabeth May, they took away with the MOU, right? Like
exactly.
There's a trust thing there too, right?
Yeah, and it's gone. So, and I don't think that Madame May will again do an about face on the next vote. So I agree with Bob. The scenario of a spring election is getting more and more real to me as a result of the evaporation of the willingness to make compromise on Parliament Hill.
It may also be what the government wants. The government, it may be that they see that this might be their chance to get that majority government and not have to have these kind of negotiations, which clearly this government doesn't want to do, and this Prime Minister doesn't really want to do anyway. We'll see. I mean, we're going to be hot into the U.S. negotiations on the new CUSMA agreement or in the new year, whether or not there's any kind of deal there. But it might be, and it also, the NDP won't entirely be organized. It will have a new leader, but they might not be totally up and running by then. So the government itself may see that this is, and the Liberals see this is maybe their best chance to try to get that.
They could say two arguments. We need a mandate to renegotiate with the United States, and we need a mandate because there is obstruction in the House of Commons, and we cannot fulfill our own agenda.
And they can say we need stability.
Okay.
In politics.
I have aged 5 years at the thought of another election. I mean, what about what I want? I mean, I want to sleep for a change.